Hey, welcome to video number 5 in this tutorial series where we're going to concentrate on tweaking the expressions that you can get from CC4 rig. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it. All right, so this is the smile expression that you get from CC4. This is kind of like the default one. I know it looks a little bit weird and awkward smile, but this is precisely what we're gonna go ahead and tweak so that it feels more natural. And we're gonna adjust and tweak some of the things around the face area so that it, the expressions look a little bit more natural. Even though this is kind of like funny to look at, we're gonna go ahead and tweak those expressions. So this is one of the most exciting videos of this series. I would say, at least for me, as well as the one that is following up this video, which is the adding the details for the dynamic wrinkles. So in this video, we're going to concentrate on the expressions, kind of like the main larger shapes of the expression before we jump into any wrinkles. So you see, right now what I have, it's a weird expression, like a weird smile, but there's no actual wrinkles. The wrinkles that you can see here, those are the kind of like the memory wrinkles in a way, the ones that we created for the normal map. They're not the wrinkles that are dynamically generated based on the expression. So let me just go ahead and show you an example of what we're going to aim for. So the one on the left hand side is the one that I just showed you, the really awkward smile. The one on the right hand side is the tweaked expression. So you see, it's a bit more natural, a bit more casual. The smile, it does feel a little bit more genuine in a way. Whereas the one on the left hand side is just a very awkward smile, like being forced to pose for the camera in a way. So they're very simple subtleties, and I'm basically using a lot of references of different people smiling to find what are the particular areas of the face, or the particular muscles of the face that are involved in a more natural and a more genuine smile. So for instance, if you look at the one on the left hand side, the corner of the mouth is kind of like tilting towards the bottom in a way, whereas the one that I tweaked already, it has a more natural, simple line. It's a more of a straight curve in a way, if that makes any sense. Whereas this one is kind of like creating an S shape. The same thing with the eyes. I think a lot of the smile, the natural smile, is in the eyes. So you see, this one is a bit more relaxed. The top lids are a bit down and kind of like squinting a tiny bit compared to the one on the left. So definitely a very subtle difference between the two images that I have in here. But this is the whole point, that we're gonna go ahead and tweak those subtleties to make it look more natural, every single expression. So the process is very, very simple. Again, you should already know by now how the process works. We have it here in in CC4, and then in ZBrush we can just go ahead and tweak everything and send it back to CC4. Now, what I want to give you in terms of the workflow are not just the steps, but some of the tips that I find very useful in this process, so you can have more control over the expressions. So let's go back here into CC4, and I'm going to click on Edit Facial, and I'm just going to set it back to 0, or reset it back to 0. Now the default expression looks kind of like angry compared to the previous one. But what I would suggest is to concentrate on specific areas of the face, because that's ultimately the areas of the face that we can actually adjust in ZBrush. So let me give you an example of that. So if we go back into ZBrush, you'll see that in the Face Tool plugin, we have 13 of these switches, and these 13 switches correspond to a different area of the face, or a different expression that is going to be used later on by CC4 to create all the expressions, right? And this is really cool because we can just go ahead and tweak and adjust just 13 of these, and then the rest of the expressions will come almost like as a default after we tweaking those. So let's go ahead and start with one. I'm going to click on Mouth Smile. So if I click on that one, you see, it's going to go through the process of activating a specific layer, a specific adjustment layer, just for the mouth smile. And you see, this is the current smile that we have. So it's not great. And it's also enabling polypaint, so we just need to turn that off as well. So I'm going to click on this icon right here. So again, this is kind of like the smile, right? And right now, the only thing being affected by the smile is the mouth, nothing else. And when you smile, or you do a natural smile, there's a little bit of squinting on the eyes. Depending on how exaggerated the smile is, you might open the mouth and that sort of thing. So right now, all we have is just an alteration of the mouth area, nothing else. So if we go back here into Character Creator 4. If we want to create a nice smile, you might just want to, open the eyes a little bit, make him squint a little bit more. We can also take the brows and just push them up a bit. And then let's take the corners of the mouth and push them up. So like I said, this is kind of like what I showed you before. The reason I'm showing you this is because this would be the equivalent of trying to achieve a more natural smile. It's not just a matter of pushing and pulling the corners of the mouth to make it, look happy. There are other muscles and other parts of the face that are involved into creating a more realistic smile. So let's go ahead and reset this back to 0 and just push the 2 corners up. Right? So this is pretty much what we have right now in ZBrush. But this is an important concept to edit or to tweak the expressions, that what we have in ZBrush are actually portions of an entire expression, and we can concentrate on just that area. Now, to make things simple and to understand the specific area of the expression that you're editing, this plugin also comes with the range, and the range is different from what I showed you before. So I'm gonna click on range, now that I have the mouth smile enabled, and you see what's gonna happen in just a second. There we go. And you see that the texture that is applied is not the same as the one that I showed you at the beginning of this tutorial series. This is a texture that shows you the range of this expression, or this specific set of the mouth smile. So in other words, this range, or this yellow area, this is where we can tweak to adjust just the mouth smile, regardless of the other parts of the face. So this is, again, very important, because you can just go ahead and start adding volume or a few things here around the eyebrows, but that is not going to be considered as part of the mouth smile. So we just concentrate on this area that is highlighted. And if you change to a different expression set, it's going to change the range and the area that we have to tweak it. All right, so hopefully all of this makes sense. Let's go ahead and jump into the actual workflow of how you can edit this specific range of the mouth, or the mouth smile. So the first thing that I want to do is go to the geometry palette here, and I'm going to switch this to the first subdivision level. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to deal with less polygons. So I want to be able to manipulate just a few polygons so that I can tweak the larger shapes a little bit. So that way I can get rid of some of these bumps around here and just flatten this area a little bit more. And it's always easier when you use less polygons. The other thing that I want to turn off is the detail layer. So I'm just going to turn this off. I don't want to have any of my normal details or anything visible, although you can if you want. But at the moment, I just want to have a clean sort of base mesh. Now, when you click on this switch by default, it should enable the recording layer. Let's go ahead and click on open the layers. In fact, let's go ahead and go back to the high subdivision level, because all of these layers are created in the high subdivision level. So you will only be able to see them when you are in subdivision level 7 or 6, depending on which one you send. So I'm going to scroll down, and you see that these are all layers, right? Like I said, what these switches do in general is just simplify the process of manually having to turn on and record and turn off things in the palette, or in the geometry or the tool palette. So in other words, this switch is just enabling the recording of this specific layer, right? So by default, when you click on it, it's going to start recording. So whatever you do, and that's why the range is kind of like showing you only this texture. Whatever you do right now is going to be recorded. So it is recording. Now let's go ahead and jump into the first subdivision level. So just as a quick recap, because I know I digress a little bit, all I've done here is just turn off the detail layer. I turned the range on so that I can see the kind of like the mask or the range area that I can tweak. And I clicked on the mouth smile. So now that I'm in the subdivision level 1, I can go ahead and start adjusting this. So I'm going to start by resetting my brushes. And I'm going to use the Move Topological, so BMT. I'm also going to check the brush palette here, and I'm going to go to the AccuCurve to enable that, so I have like a more pointy area. And also, let's go ahead and go to the render palette and reduce the opacity a bit so that we can still see the range, but we can edit things a bit better. So the first thing I want to do is adjust the corners of the mouth. So maybe with a larger brush, I'm just going to push this up. There we go, and get a more natural smile. I'm going to also hold the shift key to access my smoothing brush, but right now it's pretty strong, so I'm going to reduce the intensity, or the Z intensity, to something like 14. And I'm going to start smoothing this area. So you see, just simplifies this a whole lot. And then we can push this even more. We can exaggerate the cheekbones, or just the cheeks in general. Just add more volume to the whole face. All right, and I'm just doing like very subtle nudges at the moment. Another cool thing is if you enable polyframe, you will be able to see, actually have the texture enabled, but you will be able to isolate different parts of the mesh. So let me just show you what is happening. Let's go to texture map. I'm going to turn that off and enable polyframe. So you see it already comes with this polygroup. So it makes it really easy to hold Control and Shift and click on polygroup to isolate it. And that way you can work a little bit faster. So let me just turn this back on. So I'm going to isolate the top area. So Control Shift and click on it. And I'm just going to push this down just so that I can concentrate on this region right here. All right, let's do the same thing with the bottom one. So I'm going to push this corner of the mouth in. And as you can see, those are like tiny little subtle movements, but they do make a difference. So you see, now I have a more of a straight line in here. But I will probably also want to add a bit more volume around here and define this line even more. So one thing we can do now that I have kind of like adjusted the main shapes, is to go to the geometry palette and just go up a little bit in subdivision. So subdivision level 3, that should be enough. We can just smooth things out, and I'm going to use the BDS, or the damp standard brush, to refine this or sharpen this line here. And again, every time that I do something that looks more obvious, I'm going to use the smooth brush to maintain a nice smooth surface as well. And you see that I'm trying to follow the thicker line here of the reference texture that is being added. And I'm not trying to generate too many wrinkles, just the ones that I feel are natural. These are not going to be the dynamic wrinkles that we create later. So don't focus too much on high subdivision level. So I wouldn't go past, like, let's say subdivision level 3 to adjust these expressions. So I'll just stick to level 1, 2, or 3 at a maximum. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and use the move topological again. Just gonna push this back slightly. And another thing that we can do is use the clay builder brush. So I'm gonna press B, C, B, and that will allow us to add a little bit of volume around this area a lot faster, so that it's more natural. And I'm gonna try to flatten this slightly. Every time that I add a couple of strokes, I also use the smooth brush to maintain that nice and clean surface. And again, keep looking at references. That's kind of like the number one advice I could give you, is just try to I sometimes forget about it and then just like pretend that I know what I'm doing, and then I look at reference and I go like, nah, this is not working. I have to do it again. So just make sure that you look at the references to see how subtle the variations are, and that will get you there. Now, another really cool thing about adjusting these this range of motions and these expressions is that you can mask out the area that you should be editing, right? So for example, if I want to start adding more volume around the nostrils, maybe there's a bit of flaring like so, but I don't want to do something like this because now this stroke is outside of my sort of yellow area. Another cool thing about this plugin is that you can click on Apply Mask. So the Apply Mask is a button that would only affect whatever expression you have selected. So right now, all I've done is automatically mask out the areas that I cannot edit or that I shouldn't be editing. And that way, if I just start doing this, you see sort of like fades. I'm pressing really hard now around the nose. So this area is faded or is masked out. The same thing if I start sculpting this way, gets to a point that I cannot see it anymore. So I'm going to clear that mask now. Just wanted to show you that it's there in case you want it. And yeah, I'm just going to concentrate on adding a little bit of volume here, perhaps going back to subdivision level 1, go back to my move topological, and I'm just going to push the corners of the mouth slightly, a bit more, just so that it's more happy. All right, and we can maybe push these forward a bit. All right, that's it. So it's as simple as that. You can just tweak your expression or the range of that particular expression just by doing that. Let's go ahead and do a couple more, and then we send them all into CC4. So let's do another one like let's try the brows drop. So I'm gonna click on that one. Just a matter of like clicking a different expression, and the plugin is gonna take care of the rest. It's basically going to switch to that new layer, start recording in that layer that is pertinent to the to the brows dropped, and it's going to send you to the same subdivision level. All right, so now we are in subdivision level 1. You see that we have a different range automatically. Let me just bring that opacity back a bit so that you see these are the range, these are the areas that we need to concentrate on. So I'm just gonna push this forward a bit more. So I'm gonna exaggerate that that expression a bit. Push this up. All right, pretty simple stuff. Let's go to subdivision level 3 just to make sure everything is nice and smooth. We can use the damp standard brush as well to start generating a kind of like a pushing this in a bit, and the same thing for these folds again. They're not expression wrinkles just yet. This is just the kind of like the block out of the expressions. We'll do the wrinkles in the next video. All right, so that looks good. Maybe go back to subdivision level 1. Go back to the move topological and push this up a bit. Now, the crucial thing about adjusting this is that you're trying to adjust a generic shape or a generic range of motions. So right now, you know, you might be tempted to do something a bit more interesting, like, you know, push this thing up, and you know, this is like what I want to achieve when I push these eyebrows down. Try to avoid that. Try to stay within the more neutral shape. So I'm not adjusting things too much, because what this plugin allows you to do is that this is the only motion that you need. But when you go to the rig in Character Creator 4, you will be able to manipulate all of these things independently. So you will be able to push this up as well, or push it down. But we need to maintain a more generic expression, or a more generic range of motions. All right, so that's it for brows drop. Let's go ahead and do another one. For example, the mouth frown as well. So this, these 3 right here. So again, it's going to go through the same process, start recording in the mouth frown layer, and it's also going to update the texture with the range so that we know exactly what to edit. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm just going to smooth this out just because it bothers me, even though it's not going to be considered for this expression. And let's go ahead and add some more volume here. I think the chin is tilted up just slightly to create a more of a pronounced sort of gap in here. Let's go into the subdivision level 3. And we can also add with the damp standard brush a little bit of a depression here. This obviously depends on the type of character that you're creating, how much of these folds are visible or not. Let's go back to the move brush. I'm just going to push this in because, again, it bothers me. All right, pretty good. All right, so let's do one more. I think the mouth pocket would be a good one. So let's click on that one. You see, once you do one, it becomes very straightforward. The process is just enabling a new recording layer, which is done by clicking on the switch from the Face Tool plugin. So here we have another one. This one requires a bit of tweaking. So I'm going to go with subdivision level 1. Maybe smooth this out a bit. And let's go ahead and try to adjust this. So with this range, with this expression, there's going to be less of that sort of fold in here, and it's going to be more of a pulling. So these lines right here will be a bit straight. Again, the best advice I can give you at this point is just to constantly look at references and adjust the polygons accordingly. I know that sounds a little bit vague, but yeah, it's just looking at reference and see how different people generate this expression. Another thing you can do at this point, by the way, I'm gonna turn off symmetry, so I'm starting to get into the asymmetrical territory, really, and that obviously makes it a bit more natural. So if it is not perfectly symmetrical. Let's go into subdivision level 3. Check that everything's smooth and works nicely. Perhaps we can just add a tiny bit of volume. So I'm going to use the clay builder brush, sort of like suggest, maybe with symmetry again. Suggest a little bit of tension. Again, I didn't activate symmetry. Let's do it once again. There we go. Again, these are not necessarily dynamic folds or anything. I'm just trying to suggest a bit of tension here. All right, that's about it, really. So you can spend a bit more time tweaking those expressions, but I just wanted to give you the overall workflow of how you can tweak those and what should be the focus of tweaking these main expressions, or this main set of 30 expressions that you can send to CC4 before we add the dynamic wrinkles. So once you finish editing all your expressions, I would just probably start from the top left and go all the way down and then all the way up as well. The browse compress as well is a pretty important one, so you can also do that one. I would recommend that you do them all, obviously, because that would allows you to create all the range of motions and the range of expressions with just these 13 sets in Character Creator. So once you're finished, let's go ahead and click on Update to Character Creator. Again, exactly the same thing, the same the same process that I've been showing you in previous videos. Is just clicking on one button, the plugin takes care of the rest, and it sends it to CC4. The only thing that we need to tweak is what comes up in that pop-up window. So this one right here. So in this case, we don't want to update anything to do with the base. So I'm going to turn this off. And this is the first time that we're going to start using the expression and wrinkles. So again, the wrinkles will be something we do in the next video. Those are going to be the dynamic wrinkles. So we don't need wrinkles right now. I'm going to turn that off. So we only have the expression morphs. These are basically those switches or these layers that are going to be translated into the expressions in CC4. Now, in an ideal world, you will just go ahead and tweak all your expressions in one go, and then select them all and send them to CC4. There's actually a bonus time lapse at the end of this series that you can go ahead and watch now if you want, where I basically go through the adjustment of every single expression so that you can see what I'm doing. But it is a very repetitive process, so I just put them all into a time lapse so that you can see what I do. In this case, we only updated a few of these expressions or these morphs. So I'm gonna deselect them all, and I'm gonna enable the ones that we changed. So we did the mouth smile, frown, drops, and the mouth poker. So these 4, right? Again, in an ideal world, you will select them all and send them straight into CC4. Let's go ahead and click on Update Character. All right, so successfully exported. Now, if you remember, before I moved into ZBrush, we still had the sort of the smile in CC4. So because I sent these morphs already, look at the smile. It's already updated. It's as simple as that. Pretty cool stuff. So now we have the nicer smile. Again, this is just the range of the corners of the mouth. So this is the neutral pose. And if I push the corner of the mouth, we have a much more natural smile, even though, you don't see the eyes, which, play a big part in the smile. So if you just concentrate on this area, you'll see it's working pretty well. Compared to what we had before. Let me just put it next to each other. This weird smile. It's kind of like a worried smile. Now this looks a bit more natural, right? And we can go ahead and also check the other ones that we created, which are, if I push this down, so we have this kind of like sad, or extremely sad, or extremely disgust expression. That's another one that we tweaked. Let's revert to 0. We also had the mouth pucker, so that one is controlled by the lips. So I'm going to click on that and push that forward. So we have that one that works pretty well. Great. Let's go ahead and delete that, or revert back to 0, not delete it. And let's try the brows down. So I'm going to push that down. Great. So that's pretty good, right? So that is the idea, that you can tweak 13 expressions, and then the rest of the expressions are already there. So let's say if I want to, let's reset this back to 0. If I want to create something else, let's just make him smile from one side, like this, maybe a tiny bit more in here. There we go. And then we can push these eyebrows up like so, and then push this one down. So you see, even though we only tweaked one single range or one single area at a time, like the mouth smile as well as the brows down, we are getting quite a few expressions that are pretty cool. Let's go ahead and make him squint a bit, and maybe check the top eyelid up as well. So you see, you get a bunch of expressions that look, I think it worked really, really nice. And the only thing that we tweaked are just 4 of the expressions. So I haven't actually finished with the rest. I'm gonna go ahead and load up a project that I basically went through and finished the expression so that you can see. And that is the end result of the bonus recording that I have at the end of this series. So let me just load this app and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so as you can see, it's the same thing, but now if I go to edit facial, and let's clear this up, I have the smile and I have the, the sad sort of version. You see, I spent a little bit more time making sure, again, looking at references, making sure that this motion looks pretty good. Let's reset this back to 0. Same thing with the eyebrows. I'm gonna move them in all directions so that you can see, the range of motion is pretty good. Right, and again, this is just working on tweaking the expressions. We haven't actually gone through the process of adding the dynamic wrinkles that is going to add, a whole new level to the expression. Right, so that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and revert back to 0, and that is pretty much it. This is the end of this video. As you can see, adjusting those expressions is something that is very, very simple. You only have to concentrate on those 13 expressions, tweak them a tiny bit so that they work a lot better, they read a bit more naturally. And once you send them all back to CC4, which again is just a matter of clicking one button in the plugin, you'll have a full range of expressions and a full range of motion. So in the next video of this series, we're going to go ahead and create our own dynamic expression wrinkle, so that whenever we move, let's say the eyebrow up, is going to also create a much more pronounced wrinkle in this area automatically. So it's going to be very dynamic. So that's really, really cool and very exciting. I'll see you in the next video.